Just being honest. Nothing but the truth, yeah. Nothing but the truth, yeah. Honesty, CJ, honesty. CJ, honesty. Just being honest. Nothing but the truth.
Here on CJ Honesty, we will not tolerate the following: disrespect of religious beliefs, sexual orientation, sexism, racism, and colorism. All the isms, alright? Thank you.
Welcome to another episode of CJ Honesty. And last time on our previous episode, we were talking about how to deal with racism as a Christian, and we had our guest Brandon Merchant, who is an author and a mentor, and we're kind of going to stay in the same vein. Keep talking about Jesus, might as well, right?
Yep.
So today we have a special guest who is actually she's my stepmother, but I call her my mother. I don't like calling her my stepmom. But we call her my other mother. So her name is Tasha Haslon, but let me put some respect on her name. She is Executive Pastor Tasha Haslon of Powerful Life Church International, that's in Camden, New Jersey, along with her husband, who happens to be my dad, is the senior pastor, John Haslon. We talked with her before, of course, this episode, and her mission in life is to translate the power and the principles of God into tangible life applications that maximize potential and increase awareness of Jesus Christ. And that's really what we're going to be doing today. We want her to really teach and maximize people awareness of things that might not be taught from Sunday to Sunday or from Bible study to Bible study that people might not have learned in the traditional churches. She's had a lot of experience, a lot of accolades. She's been a part of the Trenton Rescue Mission. She has had the Flock Food Pantry. She has been certified of appreciation. Oh my goodness. She's been the Mercy County Youth Detention Center outreach. She's done so many. I could sit here and go on and on about how much she's done. She has so much accomplishment, so much that she's done in her life, and she's still young. She's still gonna.
You got more in her, right?
She's still got more.
I love it. I'll take it.
Okay, might as well claim it. Pastor Tasha, first of all, we just want to thank you for being on our show today. And with the guest today, we're going to let you guys know today what we are talking about is premarital sex, dating a virgin or someone practicing celibacy before and after marriage. And we kind of just want to get straight into it. Christina, you want to ask her this first question?
Yes, I am ready. So let's say, what if you're a virgin? How do you manage sexual desires? And if you're not a virgin, how do you manage that as a Christian?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to respond to that intro. I will definitely get to your answer. But first, let me commend you guys for just lifting up this topic and for making it relevant. I think in the midst of a pandemic and crisis here and there, certainly across the world, topics like this can get lost in the shuffle and sometimes get lost in terms of just what's going on in culture. So I just, again, commend you guys, number one, for stepping out and doing the podcast, but also for these very provocative topics that I would say online. Not only is the topic hot, it's atomic. So I really just appreciate and I am honored to be here on today. Now getting to your question, Christina, You are asking how do you manage and how do you navigate that space of being a virgin before and after. Can you rephrase that for me?
So So what if you're a virgin? How do you manage sexual desires? And if you're not a virgin, how do you manage that as a Christian?
Okay. So I think it's important to realize that, number one, sexual desires are normal and they're healthy, and also they are sanctioned by God. That's the first thing that people need to understand. If you think about it in the truest context, the first sexual thought came from God. He was the first individual, the first entity to have a sexual thought. Now let's in your imagination for a minute. So I think that's the first thing that we need to recognize. And then after we realize that God is the author of sex and even having sexual thoughts, I think it's also important to kind of harness that understanding. You and I are familiar with how the Bible talks about it's important to understand that as you are a child, you think and you conduct yourself as a child, but when you become mature, when you put away childish things. So I think that harnessing or that understanding about sex starts in the mind. It starts with having a healthy understanding, number one, of where it originated and then what sex is actually all about. So when you talk about virginity, I think it's important to understand a couple of things. Virginity is twofold, and I know that we probably need a receipt for that. So what I was looking at is Genesis, let me see if I can pull it up here.
Okay.
And I think we talked about this briefly offline, Genesis 24 and 16, where we were talking about Rebecca. And something that really helped me when I was in my early 20s with this, because even as we discussed before I got married, I was not a virgin. God to help me to reconcile that. Okay, how can I be a vessel of honor, and how can I be useful in the kingdom if I have this horrible past? And the verse that he gave me was Genesis 24 and 16, where it talks again about Rebecca. And it says in the King James, and the damsel, talking about Rebecca, was fair, fine. She looked good. Said that she was a virgin. Then it says, not only was she a virgin, but neither had any man known her. And I, that seems a little excessive, describing her like that. If she's a virgin, then okay, that should be enough said. But it said, neither had any man known her. And what God helped me to understand is that virginity is twofold. He said that it's conduct, but it's also character. It's a deed, but it's also a disposition too. And I had to, meditate on that for a minute and say, okay, how does that apply? How does that make sense? And if you think about it, if you commit the act of having sex before marriage, that's something that you can never undo. You can never go back and become unvirgined, if you will. Once that horse is out of the stable, you can't put them back in. Yeah. So what he helped me to understand and what he helped me to reconcile with myself in my own walk is that you can recover the character of a virgin. You do that by becoming a new creature in Christ. So what I really have learned to appreciate about God is just the fact that he has a redemptive measure in place for those of us, and I say us, that don't necessarily have that squeaky clean background before we come to Christ. And even if you have knowing Christ, there is a redemptive measure in place so that you don't have to, live in a perpetual permanent sentence of damnation. He provides a way of escape from that shame. And so what it is he'll place you on a journey to redeem that character, to redeem that disposition of a virgin.
Wow. All right, so the point is that it comes down to the character. Like, even if you're not a virgin, that if you're it's all about the mindset, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would definitely say that. But just knowing that it's redeemable, you can go back and reclaim it. That though there was a transgression or a mistake, or maybe sometimes we just get caught up. There's all kinds of reasons that kind of facilitate us getting involved or getting caught up in sex before marriage. And what I just so appreciate about God is that He's time enough for all of that. He has already factored in all of those mistakes, and He says, you know what? I have a way of escape.
That's good. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that really helped me in my early 20s when not only was the horse out of the stable, he had done a couple laps. Gotten a couple of ribbons, so that really helped me in my walk with Christ.
That's good, because I think most people think their mind state with that is that once they've already let the horse out of the stable, that I've already gone too far, basically, so I might as well just keep on going, because I can't possibly go back to God like this. I think people might think, like, how can you even go back into prayer? How can you even go back into worship with making a mistake? Not just with giving your virginity away, with just making any mistake or any sin at all. A lot of times people fall into that trap of thinking that they can't be forgiven when they've already been forgiven.
That's right. And God has already put provision in place so that you could be forgiven. I think that's awesome.
So my next question would be, so what does God allow as far as being physically intimate with someone else before marriage? Is there kissing involved before marriage? Is there? Yeah. And what's involved with that? Is it everything but intercourse? Yeah. Like, what does that?
What's that cool?
Yeah.
What comes in that package? Okay. What I have found permissible in the Bible, and I might sound old-fashioned, I don't know, but I'm only one, so I don't know how I could be old-fashioned. But anyway, what I do see that was not rebuked was definitely kissing. I saw how in Genesis, I believe that was around chapter 24 too, how Jacob, when he saw Rachel for the first time, he walked right up to her at the well and just planted one on her, because he was so attracted to her and really desired her. He kissed her. And I don't see anywhere in the Bible where that was rebuked. Where I do think you have to be careful is knowing your limitations and making sure that kissing doesn't lead into other activities that would arouse an individual and cause you to go too far. But kissing, hugging, I don't know if you've ever read the book of the Song of Solomon. Have you guys looked at that at all?
I believe I've glanced over that before.
No, I haven't.
I've heard that is definitely something that you want to look at. And when you look at the Song of Solomon, it's almost something that makes you say, okay, God is a little freaky.
Oh, interesting.
But yes, certainly kissing is permitted. Hugging is permitted. I wouldn't go any further than that, because then you get to the point where you are entertaining different activities that will probably go too far.
Okay. That was direct. That was very clear. Okay. Interesting. I would be like, okay, I'm thinking, oh, well, maybe we have some leeway, some things would be permitted.
The loophole.
Yeah. Okay, but I can see it makes sense, like kissing, hugging. Okay, I can see. But the kissing, though, let me tell you, the kissing depends on who's the kisser.
That's right. That's why I said you got to be self-aware. You got to know your limitations. You got to know what gets you aroused and when to back off. And so I would say, you know, it's important to also make sure that you have accountability measures in place. If you know you are one of those types of individuals that you have a light trigger, I'll just say, then you might want to just be in the company of others a lot, especially early on in the relationship, just to make sure, you know, you have those parameters in place so that you are accountable and that you're not caught in those situations where you could get caught up.
That's definitely a challenge. When you're like in your 20s, you're almost all crazy. You're like, yeah.
And we all know our triggers. We know our limitations, and it's just important to be honest with yourself, you know, and honest with the person that you're with too.
Yeah, it's all about creating boundaries and not crossing them. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and boundaries are a healthy thing. You put boundaries around things that are of value. You know, when you respect someone, when you want to see yourself and that individual have the right foundation, then you put those things in place because you know that you're dealing with a treasure.
That's good. All right, so my next question is, what's the difference between looking at someone that's attractive versus committing adultery?
Good question. I would say, because in our current society today, there's so much to look at. There's so much social media, and we're such a visual society right now that it's easy to just have so much placed in front of you that you didn't necessarily intend to see. And I think it really comes down to training your eye and training your mind as those things come into your line of view. I think it's important to say and to weigh things and say, you know what, that's nice. And this is something that my husband and I, we practice, and we're what, 20 years in? See somebody, whether it be of the same sex or the opposite sex, and we can appreciate, you know, beauty in different individuals. But where you need to draw the line is where you begin to go down that rabbit hole and start entertaining, how should I say, all the intimate possibilities of that individual. That's where you start to get into trouble. And it's I'll say this too, it's not a sin to have the thought come your way. It's not a sin to think something. It's the incubation period. Let me say that. Yeah. It's when you begin to entertain that thought, and the progression of that thought is what leads to sin. So the enemy is always giving ideas, suggestions, and, you know, throwing those fiery darts our way. But what we do with it and how we convert those thoughts is on us.
So you're saying if it's just thoughts, it's okay, but if you actually take action, that's when it's wrong? Or is it
exactly? Yeah, I would definitely say that. And the thing is too, and this is a reality here, you're going to have thoughts, but the Bible gives us a provision to handle that and to navigate that space. And we're familiar with the verse that says that we are to cast down imaginations and every high and lofty thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. But the thing is this, you can't cast down an imagination until it's in your possession. Right? So, and I don't want to get too deep in theological, but that word to cast down means to violently hurl or throw away. You can't throw away something that's not in your possession unless you have your hands wrapped around. So once the thought comes, then it's our responsibility as to how to dispose of it.
You're saying that is nothing wrong if a guy thinks something sexual about another woman when he's with someone else?
unless he acts
No.
on
I'm not saying that at all. Yeah, I'm not saying that at all. And that sometimes we can't help those thoughts when they come, but how you embrace them, how if you choose to meditate on them, that's the word I'm looking for. If you choose to entertain and incubate those thoughts, then that's where you are not being responsible. You're not being a good steward over those thoughts.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Okay, so those thoughts might come, but it's our responsibility to handle them and to manage them properly. Because like I said, oh my gosh, between TV and I mean, you could just be innocently thumbing through your Facebook or Instagram, and it's just so much that just comes your way, and sooner or later, something is going to be triggered. But it's okay to say that's nice, but that's not necessarily for me.
So I guess I'm thinking about when Jesus tells the disciples that even if you look upon a woman, you've already committed adultery in your heart. But I guess the difference would be like just thinking about looking at a woman and saying like that's an attractive person, or if a woman is looking at a man and just saying that's an attractive person, as opposed to just looking at somebody and saying I want to have sex with them.
Right. So it's when you start to introduce the thoughts of lust, and it's one thing to appreciate somebody's figure, but again, that rabbit hole is what gets us into trouble when we start going down that path.
Wow. So my next question is, it gets a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
A little bit deeper.
You ready for this one?
This is an atomic topic.
Yeah. So this one, my next question is watching pornography with your spouse a sin? So if you're already married, is it a sin to even
entertain that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say, and again, maybe I'm old-fashioned. I hope I'm not, but I would say yes. But I would dare not say yes without having a explanation. I wouldn't simply want to say, with a blanket statement, that's sin, and just walk away. But the explanation would be this. If we look at the original meaning of the word sin, and again, not getting too theological or anything, but it's harmatia. And harmatia means to miss the mark. So if you think about God being the creator, the one who had the first original thought about sex, the one who engineered sex for us, and what his original intention was for sex, when you entertain pornography, you're missing the mark of his original intention for sex. Sex was meant to be between a man and a woman. It was meant to be before or between a man and a woman that was under covenant. So when you are inviting, I guess you could say, another entity coming in, which would be that pornography, it's almost like having a uninvited plus one.
Oh, wow.
When somebody invites you over to dinner, let's say they're going to invite you over to a lobster bake or something like that, and they say, okay, Jonathan, bring Christina. And then they prepare that meal for you, Christina, and Jonathan, but somebody else that they didn't know was coming, there's not enough for everybody to be satisfied. And so that's how I view pornography. It's like, okay, God prepared this nice party, and then you come and you invite porn into the mix. That's not something that God intended for the marriage. It's not something that he intended for the covenant. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and also I would say this too. A lot of times, and I'll just put it like this, I heard somebody tell me this about somebody told, I don't know firsthand, but somebody told me, and I'm being facetious there. But pornography, a lot of times, it has scenes that are perverted. It has scenarios that are studded full of incest. And I mean, if anybody's ever watched pornography, a lot of times it might be a brother and a sister. It might be, and I hope this topic and where we're going in this is not too much for our Christian listeners, but a lot of times it will have, a lot of times it will have scenarios that are perverted, such as, like I mentioned before, the incest. It'll have a brother and a sister, or it will have a mother and a son, a father and a daughter. How can you bring that into a marriage moment and say, Lord, bless the union that we're about to have? You know, that's it's all about what you're entertaining with your eye gates and what you are allowing into that space. And so that's why I would emphatically say no. And not only that, I think that pornography breeds insecurity as well, because when you look at these scenarios that are on the screen, a lot of times they are drug enhanced. People are taking stuff to perform the way that they do on screen. And I think it's just unrealistic. A lot of times there's cuts and it's a performance. And a lot of times what I have known through by way of counsel, sometimes a woman will say, well, why am I not enough? You know, that we have to bring this or watch this in order for us to have a good time. Or a wife might look at the man and say, you know, your anatomy is not this, or it ain't like JoJo that I saw on the screen. And again, it brings you know, it brings unhealthy comparison. You know, that's just not something that you want to introduce into a marriage covenant. And I just think it's healthy to, how can I say this? Make sure that you're not just trying to have intercourse, but you're trying to create intimacy. You gotta, are you saying that you want to just have sex, or do you want to have or make love? And that there's a difference there. And so I think, again, it's that whole three's a crowd thing, that whole three's a crowd concept. I think when you introduce pornography into the mix, even though you're married, I think you are introducing an element of perversion.
Well, that's interesting. Definitely.
And maybe that's not something that our listeners have thought about, but I'm 20 years in, and again, I wasn't innocent before I got married. And I'm just saying, by way of experience and even by way of counseling married couples, it does create a wedge. Yeah, and again, it's just not something that God intended. He said the two shall become one. Yes. Become one flesh. Definitely. Not the two and then whatever's on the screen. JoJo and Sabrina and whatever. All of them don't need to be. They're uninvited.
Well, let me say, as far as like for if we get any pastors, you know, our Christian folks that might tune in, with the thought of, oh, you shouldn't say that as a pastor or a Christian people talking. My thing would be, why not? Why would you not come with information according to the Bible, according to what God has said? Would you rather your children learn it from school? Would you rather them learn it from the social kids? Media. Social media. Would you rather them go watch on their laptops and everything like that, or would you rather them get some sound information from teachers? Absolutely. I think one of the mistakes that we've made in the past in the churches is not talking about these things and these so-called things being taboo to talk about because we was trying to stay holy, which I believe you can stay holy. The reason I think you should talk about it is to stay holy. How can you I think the mistake that we've made in the past in the churches, which I believe we're getting better at now, is that we told people not to have sex or what not to do, but we did not give them the explanation, because if we gave them an explanation, then we would be being too taboo, or you shouldn't say that over the pulpit, or things of that nature. But the thing is, my question would be, why not? Why wouldn't you want to give information before the enemy gives them information? He can give them a perverse outlook on things. So you're trying to be so holy. Not that we shouldn't be holy. We should be holy. Don't anybody that's listening. Don't get me wrong on that. I mean,
that's right. No,
holy.
That's right.
But that you should learn it in a righteous way.
Yeah.
And not allow, say, I'm not going to do this because I'm trying to do it in this way where I don't cross any lines. But in the act of that, with you not teaching, now you give the enemy room to come in and teach it his way.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And I agree with you, Jonathan, 1,000%. I mean, emphatically, I agree with you. And I would say I just apologize for any instance that anybody has experienced where they have, on behalf of leadership, anybody who has had questions and maybe they honestly approached the leader in the church and maybe they gave them an explanation, but it was shallow. It was, because God said so. No, what we endeavor to do is, make sure we give the whole counsel of God. And I think if we examine the word of God, I think we can see that the Lord had a lot to say about sex. But again, in context, and that context was marriage. And I think once you, just like any tool, if you use it in the proper way, you're going to get the maximum benefit.
So, to add on to the asking about pornography, is dirty talking inappropriate before and after marriage?
Yes. Here we go.
I'm like, I need to know.
Y'all about to make me dig into my treasure chest now. Again, I think that I'll say it this way. I'll use your words. So talking dirty shouldn't make you feel dirty. I'll say it that way. Yeah. I think that every couple needs to cultivate and develop their own love language. I think it's part of foreplay. I think as long as you are, how can I say it, promoting exclusive desire between the two of you, I think it's perfectly okay. Establishing, again, a love language. And again, if you read the Song of Solomon, I encourage you to do that. I think an intimate dialogue is essential for any married couple. And it's something that, again, probably develops in the courting stage, but I think is absolutely it's necessary. As someone that's 20 years in with a healthy love relationship and a healthy love relationship with my husband, I would say definitely yes. It's appropriate.
Okay.
But again, as long as it honors the person that you're with and it doesn't make them feel or make them revert back to maybe a time where they didn't feel so good about themselves or, perhaps some activity or whatever that they didn't feel comfortable with. I think it's perfectly fine and necessary.
Okay, that's good.
Jonathan, don't your eyes are probably squinting over there. Step mom like this.
Well, that's good to know.
I don't know if it'll ever be the same. But no, I think it's all good in the context of marriage. I think it's all
that's good to know. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, everybody has to have a love language.
So with marriage, we know that we're supposed to wait until marriage to have sex, to have intercourse. So after marriage, is there any? And we was talking about things that we don't talk about in the church that's taboo because we think it's taboo. But is there after marriage? Is there anything as far as being sexual with your spouse? Is there anything that is considered that you're not allowed to do?
I would say this. I just refer back to the word. It says that the marriage bed is undefiled. And I think as long as you and your spouse are comfortable, as long as it doesn't lead to any kind of health issues, I think everything is in play. Again, as long as you're not injecting something perverted, such as the porn and certain, I would say you probably should examine and assess certain music too, because and I think that would be another podcast that we might need to talk about.
Oh,
music.
Yeah.
Definitely, right? Yeah. Okay. Good. Yes, a major influencer, and the spirits that are attached to that. Music is not neutral. It definitely is not neutral. And again, what you are allowing in your ear gates and your eye gates is critical, especially in the intimate act, because again, it's highly spiritual. Sex is highly spiritual, and I know that in this society, in this culture today, they have reduced it to something that's just physical, but it's highly spiritual.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, you have a neon green light if you are married. As long as it's pleasurable for the two of you, and yeah.
Got you.
And I want to add on to you saying sex is not just physical, it's spiritual, and you're totally right, because I just thought about like how people don't like think about this, but you create soul ties when you have sex with different people, and that definitely affects you, not just physically but mentally as well, and spiritually and emotionally.
That's right.
Everything.
That's right.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's exactly it. And it's funny, the thing about any type of bondage or any kind of soul tie is that you don't necessarily realize that it's there until you try to get free, or until you try to do something else, or the way that I've taught it in the past is that you don't hear the chains rattling until you try to get free.
Wow.
So it's just definitely, because sometimes those soul ties, they come in subtly, and you don't necessarily acknowledge until maybe you enter into another relationship, and you go to do something that should be easy, or you go to engage in something with that new significant other, and you realize, hey, I have an issue here, or, I didn't get rid of the old baggage from the previous relationship or the previous engagement. So it's important to recognize, especially as women, because we are receptacles by nature. Just even if you look at our anatomy, we are receptacles. We take in, we incubate things. And so that intimate act really impacts us, even though in this day and this time, there's such a hard facade on women nowadays. And we might should say this, we might act like, things don't bother us or things don't get to us, but God's design doesn't lie.
Yeah. Still emotional.
God's design.
Yeah.
It doesn't lie. And I would say this too, just in terms of, what goes on in the bedroom. All things are lawful, but not all things are expedient. That's right. And so just in looking up that word, Samphero, not all things are profitable, or not all things add to you. So, or not all things add value. So you just got to establish that between you and your spouse, the course of your relationship.
I just had a question that just came to me. This actually doesn't have anything to do with what we're
Sure.
talking about Pastor Tasha. But when you said,
I'm enjoying the conversation. Go ahead.
When you said all things are lawful but not expedient, I started thinking about tattoos for a minute. And I know that the Bible tells us not to mark our body because our bodies are not our own. But then I look in the book of Revelation, and John says that when he looked at Jesus and his spiritual body, that when he comes back, he's going to have his name written. I believe it's on his, if I'm not
side,
on his side. So is Jesus saying that it's okay for me to have tattoos but not you, or what is he? Or is it that like you can have tattoos put like demons on you or something, or it matters what you put on you or something, or you see Africans. Excuse me if you are African, you listening, but you see in the African some cultures, you see certain piercings that they have that might look a little funny. Is he just saying like don't do that, or is he saying like don't do tattoos at all? And it's just because I got one don't mean you. Like,
this is for me, not for you. Do as I say, not as I do. Okay, hold on. What I would say about the whole tattoo piece is this, and I think this is something that, again, is not discussed on major platforms. And what you got to consider is not just your intention for getting the tattoo, but a lot of time these tattoo artists, they have a different agenda. And I'm not saying everybody. I'm not saying every tattoo artist is like this, but some of them actually, they perform ceremonies and they consider themselves like shamans. Even like your regular, shop in the city or something like that. They consider themselves, as they are applying that tattoo, they are imparting something. So it's not just, what your intention is for getting the tattoo, or even what the image is. I mean, we, good and well, you shouldn't have, demons and things like that.
Yeah, I've seen those though. Some people have those.
Like that. Yeah, that's not appropriate for a child of God. Why would you want to, engrave that into the flesh? But the other thing to consider is, what is the intention of the artist? And and that's something that nobody ever talks about. What have they committed themselves to as they are, putting permanent ink into your body, into your vessel, into your flesh. And remember, our bodies are not our own. We're just stewarding over something that does not belong to us. That's what the Word of God says. And we've been bought with a price. So how we steward over our bodies should always have the intention of honoring and glorifying God. That's what I would say about that. Now, that's saying that you're going to be condemned to hell, because you have a tattoo. I'm not saying that at all, but I have seen major deliverance from people who had tattoos and did not know. Just like I said before, and that previous question that we were talking about, sometimes you don't realize that the bondage is there until you go to get free. And then you see the manifestation of that demon spirit. Again, I think we're on a tangent, and I don't mind it. I'm trying to be, committed to the topic that you told your listeners, but I don't mind.
Just wondering. I mean,
sometimes you don't hear those chains rattling until you try to get free.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking about the whole tattoo piece. I don't know if this is going to get edited out and go into another segment or.
No.
No, it's fine. Yeah. It was on John's heart to ask. It's a good question. They don't really talk about that in churches either. Not really. They said don't get tattooed. I mean, I know because your body's a temple. I know that. But
that's right.
I never thought about, though. That's a good point. I never thought about what is the intention of the artist. I never thought like they could have different intentions. Like, that's not good.
And some of them do. Yeah. Some of them think it's their mission in life to introduce certain thought patterns, and it's a whole series. We probably need to have a whole segment.
we come up with all these different topics,
and they're all good. Again, I just commend you guys for having these topics because it's so relevant and it's so necessary. It's so necessary.
Mm-hmm. So, with everything being said, what are some advice you would give to a Christian couple managing sex before and after marriage?
I would say that 1 + 1 = 1 in God's arithmetic. Again, He intended that the two will become one. And I think it's important to recognize that in God's mind, He orchestrated sex and marriage and the whole thing to be a reflection of our relationship with Him. He doesn't want us to have a relationship with Him and other gods and other deities, other entities. So the same should be reflected in our marriage relationship. So that's what I would say for that. There's a couple of different things, and even as I was thinking on the topic, if you are a person who is, I would say, abstaining and you're by yourself, I think it's important to recognize that there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. If you are single right now and you've chosen to say, you know what, I'm going to not engage, I'm going to abstain until, I'm saving myself until I find that one. I think that, first of all, is commendable, is tremendously commendable in this day and age. And I would say that that individual should use this time to really fall in love with Jesus. I think that is the foundation and the backbone that's going to set that individual up for a successful relationship. I would say that same individual should set their standards high and keep them high. I think that's important as well. I think it's also a time where that person can develop, how can I say, self-awareness. I think that's important when you're by yourself and when you're alone. I think it's important to really take the time to assess who you are, because if you don't know who you are, it's difficult to enter into a relationship with somebody else. If that's making sense.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And
and know what you want and need.
Yeah, and I think it's also important too for somebody that has that status of singleness right now. I think it's an awesome opportunity to begin to just intercede and prophetically just speak over that spouse to come, that spouse to be. That's something that I did in my early 20s. Had no idea who my spouse would be, had no idea how to even pursue a healthy relationship. I look back in my family lineage and it was nothing but divorce after divorce and broken relationship after broken relationship, and all the females were single. Everybody had kids, but all the females were without a spouse. So I remember just taking a season in my life and saying, God, I need you to just help me to address this issue so that I don't perpetuate the same pattern that I saw in my family. And so I think it's an awesome time. And one thing that he led me to do was to begin to pray for my spouse in advance, even though I did not know who he was. I think that sets you up. When you begin to take that issue to God in prayer before you even meet your spouse, I think it becomes easier for you to recognize who they are when they do arrive, because you spend time sketching that out with the Lord, sketching out your desires, sketching out characteristics and things that will become familiar because it's become familiar in prayer. So I think I tell you, singleness is an awesome place to be. I know it doesn't feel good. It's a rough time sometimes emotionally, but it is an awesome place to level up. I'll put it that way. And I would say also that when you choose to abstain, which again is not a popular stance to have, it's not about brownie points.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think, okay, I'm in the church, I need to not have sex. Don't have sex. Don't have sex. And if you bombard your mind just with the thought of, okay, I can't have sex, then you just set yourself up for frustration. I was looking at something and I was doing some research into sports psychology. And one thing that they said was that it's hard to turn a negative confession into a positive action. I said, wow. So, for instance, if you have somebody who plays football, for instance, and the person keeps rehearsing in their minds, don't get tackled, don't get tackled, don't get tackled. Instead of saying, I'm fast enough and I'm swift enough, I'm strong enough to outrun this person, then that person is the person that's successful.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of concentrating on, don't miss the shot, don't miss the shot. Instead of just saying, I have trained for this, I have the ability to make the shot. Those are the people that are successful. And I would say the same thing is true in your singleness. Instead of concentrating on, not having sex, instead you should say, I'm going to concentrate, I'm going to love myself enough, I'm going to love God enough, and I'm going to love my significant other enough not to engage.
Wow, that's a very good point. Definitely.
Yeah, because you can drive yourself crazy.
Yeah, for real.
Talking about what you're not going to do.
What you're not going to do. What we not going to do.
Not going to do. Yeah, absolutely.
People end up actually doing. You keep telling yourself what you're not going to do. You be like, oh, I would never do that. And the next thing you know, you're doing that.
Yeah,
there you go.
Never say never.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I learned my lesson.
There you go. Yeah, and I would say too, for any male that is deciding to preserve themselves until marriage, that is. Let me just say this. That was attractive to me when I was single, and Jonathan, when your father and I were courting, is that he thought enough of me not to violate me in that way. And when I say violate, I mean not to compromise my walk with the Lord. He cared enough and I cared enough about him as well to say, you know what, I don't want to see you take a L in front of God just so that I could get gratified, And I would say that to any woman, that should be attractive. Somebody that can, a man that can guard that entryway. I'll just use that euphemism, that entryway, so that no intruders will come in. And again, I think people misunderstand and kind of underestimate what sex is all about. It's when God tells us not to engage before marriage, it's not just so, again, that we can get some kind of religious brownie points, but it's so that we don't invite intruders into the marriage relationship. I think that you invite certain hardships when you choose to engage in sex before marriage. I forgot the actual reference, but I think it's in 1 Corinthians, I want to say around chapter 6, where it talks about the person who engages in fornication sins against his own body. And so that's the only sin where you actually sin against yourself. And so a man that would guard against that he would look out for me and himself to the degree where he would say, you know what, I'm going to put my own desires on hold so that nothing comes in, no intruders, nobody comes in to damage what we have here. I think that is immensely attractive.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's just me.
That's a rare.
We'll see what the listeners have to say about that.
That's very rare.
I hope I have an amen corner on that. But if not, I have my own relationship that has reaped the benefits of that. Yeah.
Oh, you know what just came to me, though? Was some people who might be struggling with it, or some unbelievers, their question might be, well, how do you know if you don't have sex before marriage? How do you know if you got two are compatible with each other? I've heard a lot of people say that before. Yeah.
And go ahead. Go ahead and finish your question. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, that pretty much was my question.
Okay. Yeah, and it kind of goes back to what I was saying before about how you prophetically pray before that person is on your radar, before that person is even in the picture. You pray for things like compatibility. You pray for things like their welfare and, you know, their health and their mental stability and their emotional health and things like you pray for those things ahead of time, so that when that individual comes and when that presentation is there, again, it's something familiar and you don't have to guess, okay, is this person compatible, you know, and because again, it's something that you already interceded for. So that's one way to look at it. And I would say this also, even if you don't even take that route, you know, you ain't even thinking like that and you already with somebody that's just like in the picture right now. I think compatibility can be taught sometimes. You kind of teach each other what is appropriate or what is satisfying. I think that's, you know, I think it can be taught.
Yeah, that's good. Yes. That is that's all we have.
That's all we have for today, but we definitely want to have you come back on maybe and talk about some of the music, the things that's going on with the music, the ideas of music, what you should be listening to, what not, and you know, if not, then why, you know, why not? You know, of course, just the same thing with sex, you know, not just telling people not to do this or not to listen to this, but why. I think the why is important. I think that's what has overflown. I would say that maybe I'm young, but I would say it's the 90s. Maybe it's further back than that. You can tell me, but I think that's kind of when it when it started. Is when we really was telling people not to do things, but we wasn't giving them the why. And I think that's where.
Oh no, it started way before you.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Way before you. Yep, you're not yourself. Your generation is not alone.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
But I think, you know what though? I think that I might be wrong in this, but I think that out of all of the generations, I think that even back in the day, even if you didn't believe, you had some sort of respect for somebody who said they was a Christian. But nowadays, you don't really get that same respect if you were to say that you were a Christian from an unbeliever.
No, I definitely agree with that. I think, and unfortunately, as a leader in the church, I have to apologize on behalf of leadership for those individuals that have seen things that were reproachable or things that caused them, you know, to lose faith in the church. But the flip side of that is, okay, you might have seen some things, but that doesn't take away from who God is. And, you know, when you set your eyes on man, they're always going to fail you. Always. I mean, if you're looking for a weakness in man, it won't be hard to find. But when you keep your eyes on the Lord, then you know, you can stay strong in him.
One more thing, you know, I keep getting stuff that's coming to me. It's really
that's okay. I'm enjoying it
more than the question. I hear a lot of unbelievers say. They say, "Well, I'm not going back to church because it's a lot of messy people in church."
Yep.
Well,
drama.
And drama and things like fake people in church and stuff like that. But I would say to that is that, well, you still go to the club and there's messy people there, there's liars there.
Still go to work.
That don't stop you from getting dressed and going to the club at night, you know. But you let that stop you from not only a person, but you let that stop you from going to the house of God. Not saying that for people that's listening, not saying that church you can't worship God in your house and and stuff like that. Of course, you can feel God's presence wherever you are. But I think it's something significant about joining together with people with a like mind of yours. I think it encourages you as a human being to be around other people. You have to fellowship with somebody. You're not losing your mind, basically, and being alone. I think that's another reason why God said about Adam, it's not good for man to be alone. He wasn't just talking about so Adam could have sex with Eve, but when he said that
that's right,
it's not good for man to be alone, it's meant for man to have some sort of fellowship with another human being.
That's right.
I believe that when he said that it's not good for man to be alone, what he meant was that Adam at that point in time was too much like him. God was on his own, and it's okay for God to be on his own because he's God. He can handle that. But I believe that you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that at that point, that's where he put Eve in Adam's life, so that he can have fellowship with somebody, companionship as well with somebody else.
Yeah, I would say this. My addition to that is that I wouldn't say God was alone in the sense that he was by himself, because again, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, there was always that communal fellowship with the Godhead. The Godhead was always in existence. Well, I would say to that is that Adam, being in the image of God, definitely needed to have that fellowship. I'll say that. And this is one thing that we talked about. I think we might have mentioned it either in a Bible study or even offline when we were talking, is that we were talking about the difference between the unregenerated mind and the regenerated mind, and how Adam was able to recognize Eve as his partner. And we talked about how when Adam said, "This is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh," God had equipped Adam before the fall with the ability to assess Eve from the inside out. She's bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. So as a man, a holy man of God, he was able to see the foundation of who Eve was and said, "That's for me." So I think that's critical. But I think what has happened since the fall and what has happened since the world has become so visually inclined is that now men are seeing the women from the outside in. And so their attraction is reversed, and so that's why it's really important to be renewed in the spirit of your mind. So again, when you're searching for that significant other, you're able to go in with that X-ray vision and say, okay, what is her foundation like? And is it compatible with who I am and who God has made me to be?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Good.
That's good.
Well, I hope it serves your listeners well, and I thank you so much for just allowing me to be on this platform. And again, your generation is is a challenging generation. The millennials and Generation X and all that. One thing I really, really appreciate about you guys is that you have a level of transparency that is so necessary. And I just commend you for being willing to have these topics. And I hope that you continue to have more subjects like this, because there's a lot of pastors who want to give voice, who want to give the practical application from the Word of God, but it also takes those that have a listening ear as well. So I'm appreciative again that the two could come together today, and we had the best of both worlds today. So thanks for that.
Definitely, we appreciate you. Yeah, definitely for coming on the show. We know. Oh my goodness, all the accolades you have and everything.
Oh my goodness, yes, that's impressive. I didn't even know. Oh, wow. It's very inspirational.
All that means is that the grace of God has been very thick. That's all that means. He's been very kind. That's all that means. Yeah. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Well, so definitely we will try and get you on another episode in the future. You can give some more wisdom and knowledge that you have. And we want to thank you again for coming on the show. This has been CJ Honesty, and that's it.
Until next time.
Until next time, guys. Love you. All right. Be blessed.
Just being honest, nothing but the truth.